The Sioux are coming! Scout George Herondine, in a worn leather coat, clutching his rifle astride a sweating horse, shouted to Major Reno on the 25th of June, 1876, as over 2,000 Lakota, Cheyenne, and Arapaho warriors surged toward Custer's 600-man 7th Cavalry at Little Bighorn. General Custer, in a fringed buckskin jacket, saber at his side, led his men into a valley where 268 would fall, while native losses, uncounted, bore the weight of a desperate defense. Historian Nathaniel Philbrick calls Custer's charge a reckless gamble against a united native force. Their stand for their homeland reshapes this story of valor and loss. What drove Custer to ignore warnings, and how did this clash, over in less than 2 hours, redefine a nation's history? On the 25th of June, 1876, the Battle of Little Bighorn unfolded in the Montana Territory, a clash that marked a defining moment in the Great Sioux War of 1876. This battle pitted General George Armstrong Custer's 7th Cavalry, numbering approximately 600 men, against a coalition of over 2,000 Lakota, Cheyenne, and Arapaho warriors. Historian Robert M. Utley describes it as a collision of cultures where U.S. expansionist ambitions met fierce native resistance to protect their lands and way of life. The battle resulted in the annihilation of Custer's immediate command, with 268 soldiers killed, while native losses, though less documented, are estimated at 60 to 100 warriors. This encounter remains a symbol of both military hubris and native resilience, its details often clouded by conflicting accounts. George B. Herondine, a seasoned scout dressed in a weathered leather coat and armed with a Springfield rifle, rode under General Gibbon's command before joining Custer's force. His first-hand observations provide a rare lens into the battle's chaos, untainted by the embellishments of later narratives. Unlike many soldiers, Herondine's role allowed him to witness key moments alongside Major Reno, offering clarity on events often distorted by bias. His account, grounded in direct experience, challenges romanticized tales and aligns with historian James Donovan's view that primary sources are critical to understanding the battle's complexities. Newspapers like the Herald, in the years following 1876, often spun tales of Custer's heroism or native savagery, skewing public perception. These reports, as historian D. Brown notes, frequently exaggerated Custer's recklessness or vilified the native coalition to justify U.S. policies. Herondine's testimony counters these distortions, emphasizing the strategic decisions and human cost on both sides. By focusing on what he saw, from the dust of the march to the gunfire's roar, his account strips away myth to reveal a battle shaped by miscalculations and courage. At Rosebud's mouth, on the 21st of June, 1876, Generals Alfred Terry, John Gibbon, George Custer, and James Brisbane gathered in a cramped tent aboard the steamer Far West. Clustered around a crude map, they plotted Custer's advance up the Rosebud River to intercept a suspected native village, while Gibbon's force would approach via the Bighorn. Herondine, summoned for his knowledge of the terrain, described the rugged hills and valleys near Tulloch's Fork. Historian Evan S. Connell highlights this meeting as pivotal, noting Terry's strategy relied on a pincer movement, yet underestimated the native coalition's strength, estimated at 1,500 to 2,500 warriors. On the 21st of June, General Gibbon formally assigned Herondine as a scout for Custer's 7th Cavalry, finalizing his role with a payment agreement. Herondine, wearing a wide-brimmed hat and carrying a map case, questioned General Brisbane about cavalry positions, learning they would converge near the Little Bighorn's mouth. This assignment placed Herondine under Lieutenant Charles Varnum, who led a scouting party of 6 Crow and Arikara scouts. Historian Thomas Powers emphasizes the critical role of scouts, noting their knowledge of the land often outstripped that of the officers. On the 22nd of June at noon, Custer's column of 600 men, 45 scouts, and 1,700 horses began its march up the Rosebud. Scouts Mitch Boyer, in a beaded jacket, and Bloodyknife, gripping a Winchester carbine, led the way on sturdy ponies. Custer, in a buckskin jacket and riding his horse Vic, followed closely. The command covered 12 miles before camping, maintaining a disciplined pace. Historian Nathaniel Philbrick notes Custer's methodical approach, contrasting with later claims of reckless haste, as the column adhered to a daily progress of 12 to 35 miles to preserve energy. By the 23rd of June, the column advanced at 5 a.m., following a trail previously scouted by Major Reno's detachment. The command traveled 35 miles, tracing a path marked by native pony tracks and camp remnants. Custer sent 6 Crow scouts, led by White Man Runs Him, to scout ahead, their reports confirming a large native presence. Historian Gregory Micknow estimates the trail suggested a village of 400 to 600 lodges, housing up to 8,000 people, including 2,000 warriors. The day ended with a camp at 5 p.m., as Custer prepared for closer pursuit. On the 24th of June, Crow scouts returned with alarming evidence: fresh pony tracks and a white soldier's scalp, identified as belonging to Sturgis of the 2nd Cavalry, killed days earlier at Rosebud's mouth. Custer, his blue eyes sharp under his straw hat, halted the column of 600 men and convened his officers. Herondine, though too far to hear, noted the brief pause before the march resumed. Historian James Donovan cites this moment as evidence of Custer's growing awareness of a formidable enemy, yet his decision to press on reflected confidence in his 7th Cavalry's 12 companies. On the 25th of June, scouts Mitch Boyer and Charlie Reynolds, both in dusty buckskin, reported a massive native village along the Little Bighorn, spanning 3 miles with over 400 lodges. Boyer called it the largest he had ever seen, a view echoed by Reynolds, who warned of a 6-hour fight. Custer, atop his horse, declared, "I can defeat them." Historian Robert M. Utley critiques this as overconfidence, noting Custer's 600 men faced a force of 2,000 to 2,500 warriors, united under leaders like Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse. Custer rode 4 miles to a divide, his binoculars scanning the valley below, where dust clouds hinted at the village's size. Herondine, trailing on a bay horse, spotted 2 native figures crossing the hills, their retreat signaling the village's alert. Boyer confirmed Herondine was within 150 yards of them, a close call that spurred Custer's urgency. Historian Thomas Powers notes this moment as critical, as the native coalition, aware of the cavalry, began mobilizing, with warriors like Gall leading the defense. Custer divided his 600 men into 3 battalions, assigning Major Reno, in a dark blue uniform, to lead 140 men and the scouts toward the village. Herondine, riding with Varnum's scouts, noted Custer's orders to pursue rapidly. This division, as historian Evan S. Connell argues, weakened Custer's force, as Reno's battalion of 140 faced the full brunt of the native response, while Custer's 210 men moved separately, a tactic that proved disastrous. As Reno's force of 140 crossed the Little Bighorn River, 25 scouts, including Herondine, spotted warriors setting fires in the timber to obscure their movements. Reno formed a battle line on the prairie, his 140 men advancing half a mile at a gallop. The Crow scouts shouted warnings in their language, which Herondine translated, "The Sioux are coming." Historian Gregory Micknow estimates 200 warriors initially engaged Reno, a number that grew as the village mobilized. Under fire, Reno's 140 men dismounted, forming a skirmish line facing hills where warriors, led by figures like Two Moon, fired from cover. The line extended 300 yards, but the native force, using the terrain, began to encircle. Reno ordered a retreat to the timber, where his men, clutching carbines, took cover among bushes. Historian James Donovan notes Reno's line held briefly, but the pressure of 200 to 400 warriors forced a chaotic withdrawal. In the timber, a sudden volley struck, killing scout Bloodyknife, his blood staining the ground near Herondine, who stood beside Reno. A soldier cried, "I've been hit," as Reno, in a sweat-soaked uniform, ordered a dismount, then a remount. The retreat became a rout, with 140 men scattering across the prairie. Herondine's horse stumbled, throwing him off, forcing him to run 150 yards back to the timber. Historian Nathaniel Philbrick critiques Reno's leadership, noting the retreat cost 40 men, nearly 30% of his command. Herondine joined Lieutenant DeRudio and 12 soldiers in the timber, tying their horses to trees. From this cover, they heard 9 distinct volleys from Custer's position, 4 miles down the valley, lasting 45 minutes. The firing, punctuated by rapid bursts, suggested a fierce fight, but its sudden silence chilled Herondine. Historian Evan S. Connell estimates Custer's 210 men faced 1,500 warriors, their defeat sealed in under 2 hours, a testament to the native coalition's overwhelming strength. The silence that followed Custer's final volleys at Little Bighorn on the 25th of June, 1876, marked more than the end of a battle. It signaled a fleeting triumph for the Lakota, Cheyenne, and Arapaho, who, with over 2,000 warriors, defended their families and lands against a 600-man force driven by ambition. George Herondine, huddled in the timber with Lieutenant DeRudio, heard the echoes of that defeat, a sound that carried the weight of 268 fallen soldiers and an estimated 60 to 100 native lives lost. Historian Nathaniel Philbrick calls this clash a tragic collision, where both sides fought with unyielding resolve, yet only one could hold the valley. The native coalition's victory, led by figures like Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse, was a testament to their unity and tactical skill. Their stand, as historian D. Brown notes, was not merely resistance but a defense of a way of life against encroaching settlers. Herondine's account, though limited to Reno's struggle, honors their courage by detailing the chaos and bravery on both sides. The battle's cost, however, lingers in the uncounted grief of native families, whose losses history often overlooks. This story of Little Bighorn challenges us to see beyond the myths of heroism or savagery. It demands we recognize the human stakes, from Custer's missteps to the native warrior's desperate fight for survival. What does it mean to honor the memory of a battle where 2,000 warriors stood against 600 soldiers, and how do we reconcile their victory with the relentless tide of history that followed?